Welcome, everybody, to the Retirement Success in Maine podcast. I'm Ben Smith, and let me introduce the John Cena to my Dave Bautista, Curtis Wister. How you doing
All
today,
right.
Curtis?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I think there's a joke in here somewhere of like, can you see me or not?
Right.
But for those watching, I guess I'm here. But no, I'm doing well, Ben. I'm doing well.
Well, Curtis, it seems like one thing we hear more and more from our clients as they approach or settle into retirement is this: I just want to be able to keep doing the things I love.
That's right.
And a lot of times it's gardening, walking the dog, chasing the grandkids, or even just getting up and down stairs with confidence. Um, there's this real desire to stay active and independent, and especially what we hear as we are trying to stay active in our homes.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Ben. And behind that desire, I think lives one of the biggest fears that kind of we certainly hear, and that's falling, right? According to the CDC, about 1 in 4 adults over 65 falls each year. And falls are actually the leading cause of both fatal and non-fatal injuries in older adults. So that fear of falling can really limit people from doing what they want, sometimes even before something actually happens.
Yeah, and I tell the story a bunch, but my grandfather was living independently till the age of 95,
Mm.
and had a limb over his car that he just had to take care of. So what did he do? Living by himself at 95, got up on a ladder, got the saw, and tried to saw off that limb that was over his car. And what did he do? He fell,
Of
broke his
course.
hip, and that was the end of living independently. So, obviously, one things that we are talking about, especially with falling, is obviously keeping our strength up. So, strength training, not just cardio, right?
Mm.
But strength training is one of the best tools out there to prevent falls, maintain bone density, and keep our muscles strong as we age. But let's face it, when you say strength training, to some folks in their 60s or 70s, the image that comes to mind might be lifting massive weights or grunting in a gym full of 20 somethings.
Yeah, and that might actually be more terrifying than the actual fall in this situation,
That's
Ben.
right. So today we're tackling that fear head on. We want to unpack why strength training matters in retirement, how it can be done safely, and what kind of results are actually possible for people well into their 60s, 70s, and beyond.
That's right. And I think for anybody who knows us or anybody who's watched us, I think knows that Ben and I are probably not the experts in strength training. We're active people, but strength training is not something that I at least have on my resume. So, like all of our shows, we wanted to bring in a guest who, can really be an expert here for us. So, our guest today is the founder of Silverback Strength Training. He started his journey into fitness at just 13 years old, overcoming childhood obesity through sports and training. After playing Division I football, battling injuries, he transitioned from athlete to coach with a mission to help others become unbreakable. I love that. With experience coaching collegiate athletes at the University of Maine across multiple sports like basketball, soccer, and swimming, he now applies that same knowledge to help adults, especially those later in life, build strength and regain confidence in their bodies. He's a husband, a father, and now an advocate for making strength accessible at any age. So, with that background, please join me in welcoming Coach Andy Wary to the Retirement Success in Maine podcast. Andy, thank you so much for coming on our show
Thank you
today.
guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun today. And I
That's
know,
right.
again, this is, as Curtis said, strength training is not something that's in our background directly. But I think we've been athletic a little bit in our careers, so you have a little bit of sense of that. But again, from our perspective, right, we want to obviously get into today's show. But first, Andy, we want to hear a little bit about you. Love to just have you share a little bit more about that transformative experience at the age 13 where you shaped your life and your coaching philosophy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was kind of always the really large kid, right? I was actually the same height I am now. I'm about 6'2"
Wow.
in sixth grade. So I
Wow.
grew really early, really quick, and I was pretty damn fat, to be honest.
Okay.
I was about like 20 to 30 pounds heavier than I am now without any muscle mass. But I really loved baseball. A bunch of my friends played. I had a couple cousins that played. So I really got into it, played little league, pickup, all that kind of thing, and got pretty decent. Eventually, I made my middle school team, which is a rarity as a seventh grader. Only me and my best friend Al made the team as seventh graders, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's
Um, once practice started, my coach that time saw me body wise and was like, "Hey man, we got to do something about this." So he kept me after practice pretty much every day and made me run laps. And next thing you know, it was like the end of the season and I was down about 60 pounds and I'd never been more confident. I actually started talking to girls.
That's awesome.
I had a little bit of swagger about myself, and I realized that fitness and exercise was to be a huge part of my life going forward. And now as a coach, like there's nothing more rewarding than seeing that kind of transformative process go on in some of my clients.
I love that. I love that. And I want to kind of keep going here with this build up. And I know I read a little bit of it there when we were introducing you, but obviously you had a very promising football career and path here. And I just want to maybe talk about that decision to start choosing health and long-term wellness over maybe continuing to play football, kind of post-collegiate there.
Yeah. So football was like a huge part of my life. My size was obviously a big benefit to that. So I was an offensive lineman, and offensive linemen make contact on every single play. So mileage kind of starts to add up, right? High school alone, I had broke pretty much every single one of my fingers, broke my wrist, had a metacarpal that got crushed to the point where I had to get a plate and screws put in it, a couple undocumented concussions, all that good stuff. And then the hits came on, like kept coming, right? So like once I got to the Division I level, I had a couple more concussions, separated shoulders. I kept rolling my one ankle really bad. The last concussion that I had was kind of like the last straw. I actually got knocked out. I was not feeling great afterwards. I kind of lost interest in a lot of things. Turns out I was actually a little depressed, right? Which was something that people didn't really talk about back then. I mean, this was only 2011, but people didn't really talk about the mental health aspect of concussions and like after concussions back then. They just thought it was kind of a soft injury because it was a non-visual injury, right? You couldn't see. So that kind of led me down a path to like not really loving football anymore. That along with the ankle injuries that I had, it turned out that I had 4 torn ligaments, 2 torn tendons, and a bunch of bone fragments floating around in my ankle that I had to get out. Kind of led me to stopping my football career and, just focusing on my health and be able to move at an older age. And that was more important to me than football was.
Sure. Yeah.
So Andy, you're exiting, of course, then your college career, your football career, right? And I'm sure as many athletes have is, there's you have this sports thing and that's what it's all encompassing, or especially I'm sure at the college level where it is 24/7, right? And then you have a stopping moment where you're like, now what? Right? So what was kind of that process is like, okay, now what? I'm trying to decide what to do with my life. And you say, all right, strength and conditioning is really the thing that I want to do kind of post collegiately. And how is that? And then once you chose that, how has that evolved into founding your business with Silverback Strength Training?
Yeah, so there was like a few steps before strength and conditioning, right? Originally, I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. I thought that would be my opportunity to help athletes. I really wanted to help athletes recover from injuries, like especially after experiencing everything that I did. So I had a doctor that I was close with that actually did surgery on me and my dad and that kind of thing. And I went and shadowed him and saw what he did in the office and everything. I really loved the surgical part of it, but everything else, I was like, I can't do this every day. I would not be happy doing it. Between like insurance paperwork and all that, I was like, nope. Then I was like, hey, what about maybe physical therapy? That would be a little bit more active. And kind of the same deal. I realized that it's not just all treating patients and like getting them better and back from injury. There's a lot of other kind of minutia with paperwork and running business and all that other kind of stuff. So I kind of didn't know what I was doing at that point. I was leaning really heavy on strength training and just general workouts in general to kind of keep my mental health up. And one day, like after reading a bunch of articles, I got like a little obsessive. I thought, hey, what if I make this into a career, right? So at that point, I was in exercise science as a major anyway. And I talked to a couple of professors and they're like, yeah, you could definitely go into like coaching and blah, 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 blah. One thing led to another. I wound up doing a internship as part of my curriculum. And I happened to find out that a guy named Zach Evanesh was doing an internship that summer. He was pretty close to me. I'd read a couple of his books, read a bunch of his articles online. I was like, hey, I got to work with this guy and see what this is all about. One of the best summers of my life, but also one of the most tiring summers of my life. I was working 2 other jobs as well as interning, but I learned so much. And once I saw like that transformative process, like I said before, with like a couple of kids that we coached, I was absolutely hooked. After that, I went on to work for him part-time, and then eventually he opened up another place, and I wound up kind of getting carte blanche. I was running the place. We had a lot of terrific people. We had tremendous results with a lot of people. Shout out to any of my OGs from Scotch Plains. Hope you guys listen to this. Still miss you guys. After that, my wife, then girlfriend at the time, we came up to vacation in Maine and really loved it, and kind of needed a different pace of life from New Jersey, New York area. It's very different from here, and we needed to chill out a little bit. So my wife got a job at the University of Maine, and then I wound up getting a job there too, working as a sports performance coach. I was also working part-time at a gym in Bangor called Relentless. Wound up working at the university for 5 years, worked with Division I men's basketball, baseball, softball, swim and dive, bunch of teams, soccer. Had a great time doing it, but the kind of time constraints and clientele restraints started to get to me. I was traveling a lot, working from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. pretty much nonstop. It just got to be a lot, to be honest. And I saw an opportunity to reach more people. So I opened up my own business, Silverback Strength Training, and I'm able to work with who I want, when I want, get to see my son more, that kind of thing. So a lot of different benefits.
Yeah, that's great.
And Andy, I just want to ask a question too, just based on your business today.
Yeah.
Because I know in the intro we talked about just, again, you just said opening up kind of the realm of clients that you can work with. Who are the typical people that are coming to you and want to work out? Like what's the sort of what's the things in common that they're coming to you with and saying, I need help with this?
You know what? The biggest thing that they have in common is just wanting to get better. Because I work with everybody, honestly. Like I've started to coin the phrase strength for all here. I'm actually getting it printed on a t-shirt.
I love that.
Because I will work with anyone as long as they want to get better and they're invested in it. So that's the really commonality, the people that just want to get it better in their life, whether it's just physically or mentally.
Gotcha. That's fantastic. And I appreciate you giving us quite a good background there on just kind of your story. And we, again, as Ben mentioned at the top, just like to kind of have our listeners get to know you a little bit. So I want to dive into our topic today, right? Really working on kind of building strength into being able to age into retirement. Want to kind of start with the big picture for you here, okay? So Ben and I recently had one of our clients, right? They say to us, I don't care about looking good in that bathing suit, right? I just want to be able to live independently as long as I can. So with that kind of context, why is strength training such a critical tool for maintaining independence as we age?
Yeah, so for sure. The biggest thing to focus on first is just the loss of strength and mobility as we age, unless we're training for it. So generally speaking, people after 30, if you're not training it, you're going to lose it, right? So strength and mobility both. After 60, that decrease is drastically increased. So that drop off is a lot bigger, right? So if we have some targeted strength training in our life, we can actually decrease that decrease, right? So that we stay at the same level that we're at, or maybe even get better, right? So how does this really affect everyday life, right? The biggest things are just thinking about activities that we do daily. So something that's very common with people that come in here, they have a hard time with stairs, right? So you need both strength to get up the stairs and strength to get down the stairs. So working what's called concentric strength, or basically like pushing through a movement, is going to help you get up the stairs. Eccentric strength, or controlling a load in a downward phase, will actually help you get downstairs easier and lower your risk of falling. Other things such as getting up off the ground, same kind of deal. We work on hip and arm strength so that you can push up off the ground and get up, right? Another thing would be picking things up off the ground. So that's a pretty daily activity. At least for me, I wind up dropping something almost every day. Even if it's just a couple pounds, if your back and your core isn't strong enough and you go to pick up something, next thing you know, your back is flared up and you can't move around for a few days. We work on things that help with all of that.
Yeah, that's
awesome. Well, Andy, and I think that's really helpful. And from just kind of talking about a few things, and I want to talk a little bit about this research in sarcopenia with it's age-related loss of muscle mass, right? But
Yeah.
still new term, I think, for a lot of people. And I'd love for you to explain what that is, right? And
Mhm.
how it impacts things like balance, mobility, and daily function if left unaddressed. Because I just heard you say, here's the things we're going to do and try to help build. But talk
Mhm.
about obviously just this kind of, as you said, there's this decline. What does it look like, I think, from just normal aging decline if just left unaddressed? Like, what does
Yeah.
that look like?
Yeah, for sure. So sarcopenia, like you said, is just age-related muscle loss, and it can be pretty drastic, right?
Mhm.
The thing that doesn't get talked about too much with it, though, is the effect that it actually has on different hormones. Um, a big hormone, is as bad as it may sound, is testosterone, right?
Yeah,
People think of
Hmm.
steroids immediately or TRT, but
sure.
it has a lot of important functions within the body. Another one is insulin. Everybody knows that has effect on your blood sugar and function. Growth hormone, which has an effect on muscle mass and basically energy levels. Cortisol, which is your stress hormone, and estrogen too, which can have a huge effect on bone density. So that can throw a lot of things out of whack just by losing that muscle mass, right? Um, the number one factor to go on after that is just the loss of functional strength, right? So being able to do everyday activities effectively, like I talked about before, being able to get upstairs, being able to go downstairs. If you lose that muscle mass, it's going to be a lot harder. Um, Next would be just like the muscular coordination. So basically, the coordination that your muscles have together to be able to balance and that kind of thing. By losing that coordination, your risk for falling goes through the roof, right?
Yeah.
The other factor is a lower resting metabolic rate. So basically, the amount of calories that your body is burning at rest. So when you're burning less calories at rest, your body's to burn less calories overall, and your weight can get out of control. And
Sure.
that has a huge factor on the rest of your life, right? Not only is that going to make it harder to move, but it also has effects on non-visual diseases, we'll say. It increases your insulin resistance when you lose muscle mass as well, because muscles are basically the big intaker of glucose or blood sugar. So when you don't have that, that sugar has nowhere else that can go and kind of screws with everything. And then the biggest thing, like honestly, that scares people from this is the effect that it has on those silent kind of diseases. So type 2 diabetes,
Yeah.
obesity, and then heart disease as well. Your blood pressure can get thrown out of whack. You can start having cholesterol problems, some blockages in the cardiovascular system, all things that we all want to avoid, right?
Yeah, of course, of course. This is great. This I can already tell this is for myself anyway going to be a motivating conversation here to get up and start doing some things. So you're I want to keep going here, Andy, and you're going to learn quickly that Ben and I like to bring up real life stories we have with people.
Yeah.
So another kind of example we hear from a retiree that we work with is they love gardening, right?
Yeah.
She's loving it. She spends all day in the garden. I think the quote was something along the lines of just starting to dread kneeling down all the time or having to carry those pesky bags of mulch. Just want to, kind of throw at you here, what are maybe just some practical benefits of that type of resistance training that she may be encountering in, excuse me, encountering in everyday life, but not specifically in a gym setting,
Yeah.
right?
So like general strength training alone is going to have a lot of benefits building strength through various movement patterns and like different movements overall, right? But the real star of the show is specificity and progressive overload and progressions, right?
Yeah,
So looking at something like kneeling down, it's basically looks like a lunge, right? You take a step, you kneel down,
sure,
okay?
sure.
Knowing that, I can reverse engineer that movement. Okay. So basically, like you can work with somebody and have them do an assisted lunge, holding on to something for balance and to be able to pull with their arm a little bit. Eventually, you work them to just a body weight lunge and then eventually a weighted lunge. And next thing you know, that kneeling is no longer a second thought in their head at all. Right.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of just easy. Right.
We're gonna be kneeling with mulch bags on each shoulder, I
Yeah,
think, by the end
exactly.
of this.
Exactly. And that same kind of thing can be applied with any kind of other movement, including the carrying the mulch bags. I mean, I'm
Sure.
a huge fan of just even carrying loaded things. So whether it's a sandbag or dumbbells, that kind of thing, that has a huge effects on people's mobility and like effectiveness to do everyday activities.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and just this is like a 10-degree tangent on that too, because of course we've had clients that have been saying to us a lot that they want to be active grandparents, right? Is, hey, I'm now at this age, and now I got the 4-year-old, 5-year-old that's running around. They're saying, hey, Grampy, hey, Gram, I want to play tag with you, or I want to
Yeah.
throw the ball with you, right? Or I want to ski with you, or all those things. And
Mhm.
like, this is the time of my life where I now have all the time, all this abundance of time to do things and spend time with like grandkids. But I'm a little bit worried about the strength and stability needed for these kinds of activities. So if somebody came to you with, hey, I'm trying to keep up with these grandkids and I'm trying to do these things, how would you kind of start in terms of training to maintain or kind of build those activities?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I like to say is I consider all my clients lifelong athletes. They need to learn
Yeah.
how to move, right?
Hmm.
So I like to introduce new and different motor patterns quite often with them. Um, the more diverse their kind of library of movement is, the better they're going to be able to react to everything that happens during life. So that's kind of like the general purview. And then, like I said before, we can reverse engineer certain movements like playing tag or what was the other one? Skiing, right? So,
Yeah.
Ski,
Yeah.
uh,
correct, yeah.
yeah. So, a few examples of that. So, one of the things that I like to do is actually have older individuals either hop or jump or skip. That's something that they probably haven't done in years. As long as they're cleared by their doctor, I do it with them.
I
It
love that.
really helps them mentally and physically be able to absorb force and kind of redirect force in different angles. So something like tag becomes a lot easier. And then something like a frontal plane movement, so a lateral side to side movement. So maybe like a lateral lunge that would help tremendously with skiing, be able to absorb force if you get too much air under you and you have to land and not hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Um, Different aspects of movement are just like huge in learning and like kind of building that repertoire, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the movements that I like to introduce with older people are kind of the same ones that I used with Division 1 basketball players. They're just slightly watered down versions that are appropriately scaled for them, and they have such a great effect.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I love the athletes for life. That's awesome. I want to I want to shift gears a little bit in terms of just kind of general. I think something that Ben and I see a lot, and the theme here, the underlying theme here is confidence, right? I know you talked about that in the beginning. I think for a lot of people of any age, but again, we're on the kind of retiree lens here. You maybe feel discouraged by bodily aches that are just consistent, or maybe of past injuries, right? You hear oh, my knees are shot, or I've just got a bad back, right? It's these things, and I'm sure they feel that way, and not don't want to discredit any pain or anything, but I think for somebody who maybe feels broken or fragile and is just kind of relying on those types of statements, how can you maybe get them kind of safely moving again and really building that confidence in their body from a mobility perspective?
Yeah. So I know this is super cliche to say, but
Yeah,
movement is medicine, right? So
sure.
getting people to move, it's like a highly studied fact that it actually decreases joint pain, right? So especially with strength training, it decreases joint pain across the board. Um, in order to kind of gain their trust and confidence when I start with a client that has joint pain, I usually take my time to explain some of the benefits, like physiologically speaking, of the
Hmm.
actual exercise, right?
Hmm.
So, a few key things happen when we do some strength training. Taking the body through gradually larger ranges of motion, especially under load, it actually increases the body's lubrication system called synovial fluid, which makes your joints feel a hell of a lot better.
Hmm.
The next would be that same factor of moving joints through a bigger range of motion and under load especially makes muscle more pliable, so it's easier to move through those ranges of motion. And then lastly, the other thing is just building up that muscular strength around a joint actually helps stabilize it and take any sort of slop there is in that joint, right? So if a muscle is super weak around a joint, that joint, say it's a knee, it can slide around and cause a lot of inflammation. Once those muscles are built up and keep it kind of stable, a lot of that inflammation is going to disappear on its own.
Yeah.
Um, all that being said, I kind of just like to meet people where they're at, right?
Yep.
So one of the biggest things that I see is people having a hard time getting up and down from chairs, right? So somebody that has a trouble getting down to a chair comfortably, like unsupported, I might have them start squatting to a higher box, right? And then eventually moving that box down and down and down, eventually until they're doing it weighted. And next thing you know, it's kind of like we were talking about before, that thought in their head is completely gone. I know it sounds super simple, but it's really just about consistency in doing something and having a plan of attack to progressively kind of plan everything out.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I think even though it may sound simple, I think that's what we need, right? To get over that kind of overwhelming feeling of getting back in a gym or working out again. So I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to just maybe just kind of take a tangent on that question because I could see where if I have a bad back, right, and I
Mhm.
go, okay, what's going to be in my mind if I go to talk to Andy is, hey, I got a bad back, and Andy's just going to say, well, it's time to lift weights, and I go, geez, well, isn't that going to make it worse, right? Isn't that because I hear what you just said, and when I start working with you, and this is what we're building is muscle
Mhm.
around it and stabilizing and
Yep.
all that. But how are you good? Like when someone comes to you and they go, "Geez, these are my limitations, right? And these are
Mhm.
the things that are preventing me from even starting with you, right?" How do you kind of have that initial conversation to kind of work through the challenges so that they feel like I'm starting with a good place with Andy and he knows what my limitations are and he's going to help me start at the level that is comfortable for me instead of pushing me too far and I'm going to burn out.
Yeah. So that's kind of multi-step process, right? So initially when I start talking to people, if they're kind of nervous about coming in, I just reassure them. And honestly, like being as credentialed as I am and having the experience that I do, that generally helps because people realize my knowledge, that kind of thing. And then talking about some of the things that we can do to help and some of the like kind of proof is in the pudding studies that are out there about certain things, especially like back pain, that kind of thing. Then eventually when they come in, like I do a thorough evaluation process with everybody, including their medical and injury history. And then once they come in the actual door, we'll go over a kind of like a joint mobility screen. And I just watch them move through like a host of simple movements to see how they move, what's comfortable, what's not comfortable. And that's kind of how I build my plan. No plan is like really the same, especially when it comes to older individuals. Everybody's to have a different starting point. And I think people seeing that really helps them gain like a lot of confidence and realize that I have their best interest at heart and we're actually going to make some progress.
Yeah.
Awesome. I just yeah, I think I appreciate that, Andy, because I just want to make that clear because I think there's maybe a misconception that they think I'm going to walk in the door, Andy's got his plan, and I'm just going to be put into this boilerplate
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden I'm going to start lifting 150-pound dumbbells, and I'm going to fail, I'm going to look stupid, right? And I
Yeah.
think those sorts of things of again you helping to address where people are at, build that plan custom for each
Mhm.
individual is really I think important to
And to be
highlight.
honest with that, Ben, sometimes people don't even start with weights with me. Sometimes it's just body weight movement, right?
Hmm.
So
Sure.
I think that instills like a lot of confidence in people too when I tell them, hey, you might not even touch a weight for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Again, I
Well,
think you're just doing a great job making it not overwhelming for people, right? I
mhm.
know
Yeah.
you don't need me to tell you that you're doing a good job, but what I hear is you just do such a great job stripping it down and letting people feel comfortable and able to approach.
Yeah.
So Andy, I want to again, I just we're poking holes in strength training all over the place here, right? So we want to just have you defend things and go through it.
Yeah.
And I know there's just a common belief, and you hear this and with some people that go, look, walking is just good enough, right? It's resistance training, and you just walk like 7 or 8 miles, and you're gonna be fine. You're building enough, you're burning enough calories and all that. And can you just compare and contrast like walking versus like what you're doing, especially around strength training and obviously body resistance and things like that? Just kind of go talk about where you are going past walking and kind of what that benefit is.
Yeah, for sure. So let me start by saying I'm a huge fan of walking,
Yeah.
especially for like everybody. Honestly, like there's so many easy health benefits that you can get from it. You'd be dumb not to walk every single day, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
it's so easy to do and like it's great for your health. So keep on walking if you're walking.
Great.
But that being said, it's kind of like investments with you guys, right? You want to be a diversified portfolio, right? So
Sure.
one thing might cover one thing, but might not cover another. So strength training kind of fills in the gaps with all the other stuff. Some of the things that walking doesn't do, but strength training does. We talked about that muscle loss before, like sarcopenia and all the associated risk with it, right? Fall risk increasing, that kind of thing. Walking isn't going to do much for that. Strength
Right.
training is, right? So after that, I mean, bone density is a huge common issue, especially with older women. they're at risk of osteoporosis.
Mm.
Walking is not going to do anything for that. Strength training will. Actually, when you load bones with weight, it actually signals the body to make the bone stronger and suck in calcium and restructure the bone, basically.
Wow.
The other thing is sleep and mood. Strength training has been proven to increase quality of sleep and increase people's quality of mood as well. That's studied a little bit with walking, but not nearly as profound as strength training.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, that's great. I want to kind of rotate a little bit to something that I think we all kind of hear a lot or see a lot is just the idea of weight loss. Right. And I maybe want to approach maybe the dark side of weight loss, if you will, for lack of a better term. And we've seen it firsthand with clients or just family members even that go through this weight loss kind of journey. And it's a good journey, right? It's successful. You're losing weight, but maybe you're unintentionally losing strength along the way, right? Can we talk about why it's important to really continue strength training and why it's really essential during these weight loss times, certainly in later life, and just how it helps kind of maintain that functional health along the way?
Yeah, for sure. So the biggest thing with muscle loss and strength loss during dieting, there's a few factors attributing to it, right? So people's diets may not be exactly dialed in. They might be in a caloric deficit, so they're not having enough calories to keep on everything, but they're also not intaking enough protein, which can lead to a lack of amino acids, which are what repair muscle to be able to keep it, right? So if you're lacking that muscle is going to wind up going away. The other thing is you're not getting any signal to your body to keep the muscle. Okay. So strength training is kind of what helps keep that muscle on. It's a signal to your body that is needed for everyday activity. Your body adapts to what's thrown at it, right? So if a constant stimulus is having to lift some weight or lift your body's be like, oh, we need this. We're not getting rid of it, right? We'll get rid of fat instead. So strength training during those periods is like really, really a good thing. This has actually become a huge issue lately that I've talked to a few clients about because with the rise of like weight loss drugs, there's actually been a couple studies that have been done that for like every 10 pounds lost, normally with the weight loss drug, like 3 pounds of it is muscle.
Wow.
So that can be like really eye-opening to people. So the combination of getting enough protein and strength training can really keep on the muscle mass and strength and avoid some of those risks that you get with muscle loss, especially at an older age.
Yeah.
Well, I want to kind of talk about maybe a different situation too. And I know that there's, and maybe it's a little bit less so today, but I think over the last maybe 20, 30 years of retirees is you see that we've all just really binged on our careers, right? Hey, we want to do a good job and we want to be appreciated at work and we put a lot into, and pride, I think, into our careers. So we're very sedentary during that time of life, right? Hey, we're kind of sitting at a desk, we're pounding away at a keyboard, and we're doing it for 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week, right?
Yep.
And then you get to this point of like now I'm closer to retirement or I'm going to be retired and I'm now in my 60s or 70s and I was high pressure before, a lot of stress, not taking care of myself. As you said, maybe there's some hidden kind of underlying health issues that are coming up because I've maybe not taken care of myself. And now is this great time where I can reinvent and I can really put some time in. So someone comes to you with that kind of situation. Talk about just kind of what that initial conversation looks like from your end. Again, I heard you say your initial assessment where you go through and help see where they're at and understand it. But how are you kind of coaching them as they kind of are building this kind of strength plan with you?
Yeah. So other than the evaluation, the other big piece is just talking and getting to know everybody, right? So seeing what their goals are going forward, whether they need to lose some weight for their health, if they just want to keep muscle mass on so that they can do everyday activities, or if they have certain physical activities that they want to do, like they might be a golfer and they want to be able to keep golfing and drive the ball a little bit farther. So like going off of that, I think builds a lot of confidence and like kind of gets people bought in, right? Knowing that we're working towards a goal. And I think that's kind of like the good piece of like the mental health aspect, especially with training. like, especially with training the retired people, right? Like you were talking about, people are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and they have goals at work, and they're always kind of driving for those goals. Most people are goal driven, right? So they kind of lose that as they retire, and training provides an opportunity to have a goal in something else, to work towards losing 10 pounds, to being able to do a full push-up on the floor, to be able to squat down to a 12-inch box, whatever it may be. People like having goals and seeing that kind of confidence that it brings about after accomplishing them. So I really think that building a goal kind of list for people out, like, really gets them bought into the process, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think what I want to just kind of say to that too is I think it's really important from again, kind of in this stage, and as you said, kind of seeing tangible wins, right? Is
Yeah.
kind of what you said is, hey, I'm goal oriented, and I was doing all these things, and all of a sudden, hey, I'm with you, Andy, and I'm a golfer, and all of a sudden, like, we do strength training, is like, hey, a month later, now I'm more flexible, and I'm not getting tired by the 15th
Mm-hmm.
hole, or geez, I was able to add a few yards maybe to that
Yeah.
drive, and all of a sudden I'm by my buddies a little bit. I'm feeling good. I'm building confidence, right? And I
Yep.
think kind of tying what the physical process is to a result that builds confidence, and it just cycles. So I applaud that for you, because that sounds like a really awesome thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Andy, something I think we read it off in the very beginning of the conversation, but you talk a lot about making people unbreakable, right? And that's not just physically, but emotionally and mentally too.
Mhm.
Um, just kind of from a top-down look, like, what does that transformation look like in the clients that you coach? And maybe what's something that you think most retirees might be surprised to learn about their own strength if they were to start working on it?
Yeah, awesome. That's a great question. I love it, honestly. So designing the programs for people and building resilient bodies and everything is one thing, and it's awesome, don't get me wrong, but like the mental piece to it is even more rewarding to me.
Yeah.
I really, really think, especially as people get older, they need to do appropriately hard things physically in their life to keep their mind tough, and kind of keep going, right? Interestingly enough, it actually has a huge impact on your brain, specifically your hippocampus.
Okay.
By challenging yourself, your hippocampus can actually grow, create new neurons, and have effects on increases in memory, better emotional regulation, and even make more challenging things easier going forward, right? So I think that that's a huge piece of it. One transformation that really sticks out in my mind is a longtime client of mine. She's a retired surgeon. During her time as a surgeon, she kind of had a jacked up body, right? She was kind of forward operating
Sure.
on people all the time. Posture was bothering her, all that kind of stuff. After she retired, she really prioritized her physical fitness and like wanting to be able to do a lot of different outdoor activities with her grown kids and all that kind of thing. Her body feels great, all that. But one story that sticks out to me, and it's like one of my proudest coach moments, honestly, is recently I got a text from a random number pretty late at night. It was like 10 o'clock at night. Uh, it was from a number that I didn't recognize. So I was like, okay, who's this? And I was like, oh, it's Michelle. And I was like, oh, Michelle's on a white water rafting trip right now. Is this like a satellite phone or something? And it happened to be. But
Wow.
anyway, she went on a text message and told me afterwards about this whole story. But she was thinking that this whitewater rafting trip she went on in the Grand Canyon was going to be a pretty easy, laid back whitewater rafting trip. And it turned out to be like crazy hard trip, like super hard, and like a wooden boat and all
Oh,
that.
wow.
And one of the boats that she was with actually flipped.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And a couple of people wound up in the water, and she was actually able to pull out two full grown men back into the boat.
Holy
Wow.
moly.
Separately, of course, not at the same time.
Yeah,
Sure,
sure.
sure.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
like in that text message, she said, like, hey, if it wasn't for all the training that we've done, I never would have been able to do this.
Wow.
And that kind of thing to me just sticks in my head all the time. And it like really reinforces my love for everything that I do. And it's remarkable the kind of confidence that I built in her to be able to even think about doing that, because she's not a large woman. She's pretty tiny, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I really think that like that physical push that people lack especially as they get older, is something that's going to have a huge benefit in their life. And I really think that people don't realize the ceiling that they have for their physical capabilities because they're not pushing it very often. Yeah. But when you do push it appropriately, that being said, like appropriately, I really think it opens people's eyes to what their body's capable of.
Yeah, well, and I think we applaud that too, because I know from obviously what we try to do on the financial lens on a coach, right, is like we're trying to look ahead for them and say, hey, as you're aging, and these are the things you need to be mindful of, and this is what we've seen people go through based on when this happens or when that happens, right? So I think we're just a big fan of coaching in general. So we applaud kind of everything you're doing from a, hey, if I see people that maybe don't take care of themselves and here's what they struggle with, but the people that do these things and here's how they're able to kind of improve. But I want to ask a question about you personally, Andy, because I know from just obviously from just following your page on Facebook and such, it's like, so you've been doing your own kind of improvement, right? Is working on like a strongman competition, right?
Yeah.
Is something you just did.
Yeah.
I want to hear a little bit about that real quick, because I think it's one thing to talk about others, and that's easy of what you do and help you coach them. But talk about your own goals a little bit here on why are you kind of pushing yourself on the strongman side, and what are you trying to accomplish? I think maybe even just by example to others that you're helping to train.
You hit the nail on the head there. A huge piece of it is just leading by example. I think as a coach, I need to be doing the things that I preach, right? I need to be pushing myself and getting myself better. And honestly, like I talked about before, it's a huge piece to like just keeping my good mental health and keeping myself happy. I know I get a little cranky when I don't train. My wife will tell me, my mom used to tell me when I was younger. So doing that just keeps me even keel, but mostly just for kind of leading by example and like showing there's proof in the pudding of what I do, right? Showing my strength, it helps the clients see that what they're doing is going to work too. And honestly, like the response that I got from some of my clients from seeing some of the stuff that I recently posted about the competition that I was doing and the training that I was doing is tremendous, and it keeps me motivated to train. So I love it.
That's awesome.
And I would just want to apply one thing too, is I think in this day and age where it's social media and we only show the glossy polish of everything, right? Is like, oh, well, look at Andy, he just nailed the competition, and look at his keg lifts and all these things that you did. But it's like, okay, here's the ship pull or the boat pull where you were doing it. And you're like, okay, so it was muddy and I couldn't get a grip and I couldn't really move this thing as far as I really wanted to. You're like, I didn't do what I wanted. I felt like I could have done better, and this is what didn't work. But you showed kind of the picture of you struggling with it, and maybe it's a video of it. You're like, this is what happened is I did my best. That part didn't work, but here's the other pieces. And it wasn't just, oh, I nailed these 3 things and then don't talk about the 2 you didn't do as well on. But it was like, here's the entirety of it. Here's where I do need to get better and hold myself accountable to it too. So I applaud that too, is that's really pretty awesome to see just all that effort.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Just like everybody else, I'm not perfect, so I don't want to lead that. I don't want people to think that I'm perfect by any means.
Yeah,
so, awesome.
No, that's amazing. It really is. I have one last question for you, Andy. So being a retirement focused podcast, I'm gonna ask you to look ahead a little bit. So I have to ask all of our guests this question. Again, the name of our show, Retirement Success in Maine. I got to ask you, when you get to that point in life, what does a successful retirement look like for you? Like, what do you think that encompasses?
So I think my retirement is going to be a little bit different than most people's, to be honest.
Right.
I really want to build a legacy business. So I want to build my business to the point where I can have somebody else run it. Like eventually I don't want to be full time by the time I'm like 70 years old by any means. But
Sure.
I want to build it up enough that it has a reputation and it runs pretty much on its own with somebody kind of at the helm. And I honestly don't think I'm going to stop coaching until I'm dead, to be honest. I love it too much to like give it up. And I always think of my one uncle, my great uncle. He's basically a surrogate grandfather because my grandfather's passed before I was born. He worked as an electrical inspector until the age of 91 or 92. Was in great shape, very mobile, that kind of thing. And pretty much a year after he retired, he passed away. I think keeping active in some sort of capacity, even if it's part-time, is going to help me live as long as I can and kind of spend time with my son and hopefully future children. And eventually maybe their children, and be able to go on vacations with them and see them as much as I can.
I love that.
Awesome.
That's a great answer.
Well, Andy, we really appreciate you coming on the show today, taking the time and just sharing your knowledge, kind of talking about this topic today. And we'd love to have you back at some point, just to kind of maybe I'm sure there's a myriad of different topics we could touch on with you. But thank you so much. We'll be in touch, I'm sure, very soon.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. And go get stronger, guys.
We will.
I love it.
All right. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
It's really great to have Andy on the show today. Again, strength training is that. So I know we talked about, like, we've done nutrition, we've done fitness, we've just done personal training.
Right.
But obviously strength training is a, very focused part here, and we thought was really great to have
It's very
somebody like
personable,
Andy's.
like personalized too, right? It's not, as I know we went through it in the conversation, but it's very much a dedicated approach to you, the individual, and not this cookie cutter. You jump in at step 2 and go to step 8, right? He's super personable, and awesome.
And I think the goal is that, you're not walking in there and my goal is I have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger at Mr. Universe level.
Exactly.
I can just be my own, personal best and have that goal. So, I think he really nailed that. The special thank you to a personal connection that connected both Andy and us, Barbie Prentice. She's been a listener of ours, and we appreciate her thinking about us and going, you should talk to Andy because I think he'd be really awesome. And of course he was.
He was indeed.
So if you want to check out a little bit more about the show, look at the show notes. We got links to Andy's business, Silverback Strength Training. So we'll have the websites there. You can find them on Instagram at Silverback_strength training. You can go on Facebook as well. You can find Silverback Strength Training there too. As I said, he does some really great content and just kind of highlights some of the things that he's doing. And you can go to our website at blog.guidancepointllc.com/112 for episode 112. And again, you can find all that there. We really appreciate tuning in today and listening to our show. And we'll catch you next time.